Snaps good, holds good, kick on the way by Conradi, end over end, and it is good! Kyle Conradi hit a 54-yard field goal, and Iowa State leads it 20-19! Oh my goodness!
What's up, everybody, and welcome into the Iowa State Fan Perspective, brought to you by us here at Play the Fight Song College Football Show. Welcome into another episode of Get to Know the Opponent. The Cincinnati Bearcats are on deck, and who better to represent Cincinnati than my guy Steve Maurer from Viva La Cats, Cincinnati Bearcats Focus Podcast. You can find them on X at Viva La Cats or just Spotify, YouTube, kind of anywhere you get your stuff from. Steve, appreciate you joining us tonight, man. You ready to talk some Cincinnati football?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm ready. I mean, I might be more ready than the team is, but we'll get into it.
I know you guys do kind of everything for Cincinnati. I know you guys talk a lot of different things, and I myself am not a college baseball guy, but I know you guys were pretty immersed with the college baseball world kind of pretty much recently. You guys, to Cincinnati, at least, I got to know, they get into their college baseball pretty serious?
Well, so it's been growing a lot recently. So, the thing about joining the Big 12 is that a lot of the big schools in the Big 12 have 3, 4, or 5 sports that they follow really, really closely. And Cincinnati, we're definitely football and men's basketball both have a strong following, but we've been kind of looking for a third sport for people to really get into. And the baseball team has really stepped up over the last 2 years, especially as the other two teams have not really been able to make the postseason. So it's been great. I'm personally a baseball guy. So if you've seen the tweets, that's me. That's making the baseball observations. I love getting into the nitty gritty and stuff. I was just watching the Reds a little bit earlier, so I'm deep into it, and it helps when you have the Big 12 Player of the Year on your team. So, but I think that's been a thing that a lot of fans have wanted for a while, is a third sport to really get into, especially in a pro sports city like Cincinnati, and hopefully the baseball team's able to hold it. We've had different sports take that mantle for a little bit, but it's fun, man. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sure that is a lot of fun. As an Iowa State fan, unfortunately, can't relate because we can't put a baseball team on the field. We haven't in 2 decades. So I don't know. I get big into golf during the spring, which may sound sad to some, but it's like football, basketball season, and then your spring. Your spring and summer. You gotta. That's why we bring you on, man. We gotta talk some football here in June. So we're excited to get to do it because honestly, I think the outsiders, there's a lot of interesting things about Cincinnati. It's just a matter of, will it be put together? I think year 2 in the Big 12 under Scott Saterfield last year, just the season in general, I don't know, felt like some of it was just left to be desired. You finished the season on a 5-game losing streak, but you beat Arizona State. And I know Sam Leavitt wasn't playing in that game, but still a huge win along with some other big wins. Going into 2025, what is the vibe from just the Cincinnati fan base in general in year 3 in the Big 12?
Yeah, so definitely still excited to be part of the Big 12, but I think now after 2 years of being in it and frankly being beaten up by it, it's been a thing where we realize how much it's going to take for us to get back to that level where the 2021 team was, if we ever do get back there. And, I don't think we had the same mindset as UCF fans maybe had, especially coming in off of that high and then losing our coach before even playing a Big 12 game and understanding who we had hired and what he had done previously. So there's definitely some ebbs and flows there, but I think the disappointing part was, like you mentioned, starting 5-2 and then losing out the rest of the season was very disappointing, especially when there were some winnable games near the end of the season. There was a tough stretch, but our mantra on our Viva La Cats show last year was bowl by Boulder, meaning that we wanted to get to 6 wins before or at Boulder because we knew how hard the last stretch of the season was. West Virginia at home, back-to-back road games against Iowa State and Kansas State, and then a home game against TCU, who went 8-4 last year. And it just did not really turn out the way they wanted to. And so heading into 2025, I think we realized that the buyout is maybe a little bit prohibitive for Cincinnati to consider having Scott Saterfield really on the hot seat this year. But he comes in with another fairly consistent schedule and a good chance for them to get 6-7 wins. And I really think that's what he needs this year to be able to remain off the hot seat going into 2026. I don't even think it's a question for 2025. Sure. just because, you're still getting the investment up, just opened a brand new $134 million football facility. There's still a long ways to go to match what other Big 12 schools have been doing for years now. So I think Cincinnati fans are just going to have to hope and pray that the coach kind of turns it around and is able to bring us to even more success.
And I think confirm this with me. So I was doing a little bit of research. Is the strength coach, he's brand new, right?
So we have had the strength coach for a while. But we recently have replaced our, we've had an offensive coordinator. We had Tom Manning that you guys might be familiar with at Iowa State. Had him for about a month before he moved on. But we do have Tyson Veit, who was under Heacock at Iowa State and has been I would say the defense was a lot more improved last year than it was in 2023. So there is definitely a lot of good things happening. The only couple new things is that we did lose a few big pieces from our, especially from our offensive line. Had a second team All-American who was later moved on to the NFL this year. In Luke Kandra. Sorry, I'm blanking.
No, you're good.
And then we had, we got good Joe Cotton coming in, elite tackle from South Dakota, a couple other guys. So I think the offensive line is going to be a new thing. And also, defense, we do return the Godfather, Dante Corleone. He's going to be able to stop the middle. But there's a lot of guys, too, that, had some good seasons last year and may not have gotten as much notice that are coming back and getting that experience. So there's still, obviously, in college football, everybody's new. A lot of different positions are new. But the nice thing is offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and strength coach all retained for at least a second season. So I really like the direction that the coaching staff is in. And we're just looking for the players and the scheme to reach that level.
Sure. And the reason I brought that up is because I was watching, I think on Cincinnati's athletic YouTube page, was watching their little short video. They're kind of, if you haven't watched it, if you're a Cincinnati fan, go watch it. I can't remember what the name of it's called. It's just kind of fun to follow and seeing kind of what their journey's looking like this spring. But it felt like to me when they highlighted the strength coach was, I think the identity shift this year feels like they want to be the enforcer. They want to be more of the physical football team. I think you get that. Joe Cotton, I thought, I'm from South Dakota. I live here in South Dakota. So I thought that was a big pickup in the portal. They picked up another guy at the other tackle spot. I think he was from Albany, I think I saw. Yep. And then you maintain Dante Corleone, who I do want to kind of talk about a little more. But just it seems like the emphasis this year is they want to be big and they want to be beefy on both sides of the football and the lines. Is that kind of what was missing last year? Was the physicality, you think?
Yeah, and so the problem was as well is that with the 3-3-5 defense especially, it's not really known as a blitzing defense, but there were certain stretches within games where there was no pressure being applied to at all, and even quarterbacks who are not the greatest can still – college quarterbacks, especially in the Big 12, can still pick you apart if they're given – loads of time to throw. But Cincinnati had to drop 6-7 guys in coverage because we felt that our secondary was not potentially the strongest. And I just remember from the Iowa State game, a guy like a couple of years ago, like Higgins just ripping us up, so it's one of those things where I think the goal this year is to force more pressure just from those 3 down linemen. And if you need to bring in a blitzing linebacker, you can, but that 3-3-5 is about stopping that passing attack. And a lot of Big 12 teams do run the ball very well, but there's a lot of strong passing offenses. So I think what you mentioned is to stay physical up front on defense. And then on offense, I did mention that we have an offensive coordinator, but Scott Saterfield is really running the show on offense. Sure. And I will say, I know I mentioned that fans are down on him as a head coach, but as an offensive coach and a play caller, he's tremendous. He's had multiple games where both rushing attack and passing attack have over 200 yards. And he looks to kind of create some of that off tackle wide zone run schemes where that opens up the pass later on. And I think the problem for Cincinnati later at the end of the 2024 season was that the passing threat was being taken away and they were being forced to run the ball. And that while they did have Corey Kiner, who's with the Niners right now, as a back that could go through the tackles, it was just not a success story when you got to 3rd down and 4, third down and 5, third down and 6, and you weren't able to complete passes as consistently as you were earlier in the season. And with that pressure too, being a big part of that. So you're exactly right. Football is won and lost in the trenches, and UC is trying to get there this year.
Well, that was another good point you made, and that's kind of a good segment into talking about the guy. And I think there are a lot of Big 12 fans who are really interested in Brennan Sorsby and like what kind of jump he can make this year, because we saw, I think, some really good flashes, and then we saw some lows. And I think as someone who didn't watch all 12 Cincinnati games last year, the Iowa State game kind of felt like a perfect culmination of the Brennan Sorsby experience last year. Unfortunately, just like using his legs, just awesome in the first half, was a huge playmaker. And then a couple of just bad turnovers late, I think, really cost the game for Cincinnati, who I thought had a chance and I thought was going to win the football game 3 quarters into that, to be completely honest with you. So what's the next level for Brennan Sorsby? What does that look like? I know you mentioned maybe completing those third downs is maybe another jump.
Yeah, and he did showcase his running ability in that Iowa State game as well as a few other games, and I do think it was a great ability for him. He actually had more rushing yards that game than he did passing yards, so not potentially the greatest. He's not necessarily known as a run-first quarterback, showing his skills there, but see, the thing to me, though, about Sorsby is that it's got to be a thing where he can find those downfield threats. And I think Cincinnati's done well to bring in guys in the portal, such as, Caleb Goody, Cyrus Allen. And then we also have Joe Royer, who's been a huge part of this Cincinnati turnaround, starting here last year and being here this year, Cincinnati native as well. So having those consistent offensive passing threats is going to be a big portion of it for him. The other thing too is that you're showing the West Virginia game right now, just with our photos, and there was just 2 turnovers during that game that basically flipped the tide 14 points for West Virginia and gave them their gave West Virginia that win. And even though Neil Brown did get fired later on, that was still seen as a big win for West Virginia and a big loss for Cincinnati. And that was probably the turning point right there where the season kind of fell apart after that. And obviously that was why I was wanting the bowl by Boulder last year, because I respected how hard the schedule was for the last 5 games. And when you have a quarterback who is, attempting to be a playmaker and a hero, I respect it, man. Like I'm all for it. We see it all the time in college football, and those are some of the best moments is when quarterbacks make something happen. But it did feel like at times he tried to make too much happen, and he got burned for that. And you can't necessarily do that in the Big 12 because these defenses, I credit the defenses in this league as well, because they're ball hawking defense that are going to, been a big step up from about 10 years ago when there was not as much defense being played. So I think the thing for Sorsby is that he's got to limit the mistakes, take what the defense gives him. It's a cliche, but it's very true, because there was certain points last year where he was still attempting deep balls on second and third downs. And even if that was the play call, I do feel like maybe reading the defense, understanding some coverages could be a little bit better for him. But the thing is, though, I still feel that he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in this league.
100%.
There's a lot of different just random accounts that'll put him bottom half or bottom quarter of the league in the quarterback rankings without ever having watched him play. And I can't blame people for not seeking out Cincinnati football over the last 2 years. There's much better football that has been played, but this guy's good, man. And I do feel that his junior year, he's given another chance. He's chose to stay at Cincinnati despite some other offers. In another year in this system, I definitely feel that he's going to be able to progress and grow and make it even better.
Well, I think, and another thing too, I think he needs a little bit of help. And I know you mentioned that. And so that's what their main focus was in the portal, was bringing in, I think I counted 3 or 4 new guys at the receiver spot from the portal. I know you mentioned a couple of them, but is there one name that Cincinnati fans should know that he's probably going to be the number 1 option this year?
Yeah, so Jeff Caldwell was a name that stuck out in spring ball, and he was making one-handed catches. He was kind of just catching everything that was coming his way. So this guy's going to be a burner. He's actually from Lindenwood, which is a D1, but an FCS school. So maybe not as many people know about him, but the guy's got range. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He can run. He can make those flashy catches. And I think it's a guy like that where in this era of football, where, with transfer portal and everything, I know there's a lot of different talk about that, but it's pretty cool to me to see a guy who maybe started at a school like Lindenwood, but was going to get his opportunity this year to really shine on the big stage in the Big 12. And if he's able to deliver and help Brendan Sorsby free up some more space, as well as Joe Royer too, who's going to continue evolving, I think there's a lot of different weapons in this offense. And if Brendan Sorsby is able to control and coordinate that offense and keep it chugging, they could definitely be something in this Big 12 this year. I think the best thing about this league is that it's wide open right now. Even though Arizona State won last year, Cam Scadaboo moved on, and there's still an opening at the top. So I don't really think that the Bearcats are Big 12 contenders, but if they get things going right and rolling their way, they do have a chance to be dangerous.
100%. I think I was just listening to Cover 3 the other day, and Bud Elliott had them as their dark horse. So I appreciate Bud's knowledge. One thing I wanted to ask, though, the last thing on the offense, as you mentioned it, the replacement of Corey Kiner, because he had such an impact on the offense last year. I look at a guy like Tawee Walker, who comes in from Wisconsin, Oklahoma. Is he going to be seen as the guy to replace that production, or is there maybe a multitude of guys, or what's that going to look like?
Yeah. So if Corey Kiner was kind of like the first and second down back who was asked to kind of go between the lines, go between the tackles, and gain a consistent 3-4 yards for the offense every time he was handed the ball. And so what Tawee Walker is going to be asked to do is to do that. But we have a home run hitter, and his name is Evan Pryor, and this guy was ripping off 50-yard runs at the start of the season last year. If he gets an ounce of space between the tackle and the tight end spot, look out, because he can turn it on really quickly. There was a couple of different home runs, and so Cincinnati's going to look to not count on that, but have him be their big play lightning back and Tawee be the thunder back, kind of like what they had last year, and hope to keep that rolling because Evan Pryor just has that ability to change a game quickly with a 60-yard touchdown. So, and then there's also Manny Covey, who's a redshirt sophomore and has not really gotten his opportunity as much, but he stayed with this with the team throughout, being committed to Luke Fickell. So he's been a part of this program before the new coaching staff came in. So I love guys like that who are able to, find something they like and stay with it. So I would love to see Manny get some more run this year, but Tawee and Evan, they're going to try and be that lightning and thunder approach. And if Tawee can just continue setting up those inside runs and continuously gaining 3, 4, 5 yards, Evan Pryor can really bust one out, and it could be 7 more points really quickly. So that's something that Saterfield, I feel, has done well with this offense, is that he's been able to build a strong line. Especially last year, he had a really strong offensive line, and be able to coordinate his running attack through that. And the hope, obviously, for every offensive coordinator is that when your running attack is being respected and given attention, that opens up your passing game. And so the hope 100%. Is that with a guy like Tawee, he can kind of bring similar production to what Corey Kiner did for Cincinnati last year, allow Evan Pryor to get out in space, and then allow Brendan Sorsby to use those backs and be able to build off of that in the passing game.
Let's flip it to the other side of the ball quick. And Iowa State fans, they want to mention it. And I know you mentioned his name a little bit previously. Tyson Veit enters year 2 as defensive coordinator. It's funny when you talked about like what you guys want to see out of the 3-3-5 this year. It just resembles Iowa State. Like, I think last year Iowa State's 3-3-5 pass rush took a step back, and it sounds like that was kind of the adjust point for Cincinnati next year. Is that the main focus? Like, we need more pass rushers on the edge, or what do you want to see improve on the defense to take that next jump?
Yeah, so in the 3-3-5 as well, there's always an overhang linebacker, as some places call him a star, jack, however you want to call it. But there's that extra position that's kind of that overhang and is asked to do multiple things, whether it's to float out to the defensive backfield or to help stuff the run. We've got a couple good guys within that position, and Jake Golday, who's a D2 transfer from a couple of years ago, who was able to shine bright in some spots last year, as well as Jack Dingle, who's been with the program since the Luke Fickell days as well. Both of those guys are going to be huge for Cincinnati if they're given that opportunity, because Jake Golday probably single-handedly ended the game last year for Cincinnati at UCF when he was able to get to the quarterback and stop UCF's late drive and able to run out the clock so Cincinnati could beat our rival UCF. And so I think once that, but it all starts up front, like you mentioned. So we've got, Dante Corleone, Rob Jackson is there as well as another backup piece. And another young guy that I like a lot is Marquez Parker. He's a true sophomore, and he got a lot of playing time last year as a freshman. And to be a defensive end playing as a freshman in the Big 12 is a huge step. And so with another year with training and development under strength coach, strength and in the staff, I really like his potential. So there's a lot that needs to happen. The problem is for last year's team is that they had a big depth piece get hurt in training camp and be lost for the season. So they need to stay healthy and be able to rotate those guys in. And also Dante Corleone was coming off of blood clots last year before the season started, missed the first game of the season. And I don't know if he was ever fully right. And that's, it can't really blame him, right? That's a medical condition. It's really hard to say anything about that. So the hope is that he's able to be full strength this year and really be that intimidating Godfather presence that he was for his first 3 years of school, and then be able to come back stronger for his final season at Cincinnati.
Iowa State feels like they have a similar situation with defensive tackle Dominique Orange, who's probably the most important player on their defense this year. And
Love
it's
that
expected guy. He's awesome. But I see everything's the same. Corleone was before him in 2023 with how good he was. They said Orange might play 60% of snaps this year. Are they looking for the same thing in Corleone? Like, are they expecting him to play over at least 50% of snaps? They're like, you got to be the guy. We got to find your 2023 back.
Yeah. And he is asked to be the guy. He is asked to be the leader. And I think the thing that maybe some outside fans or fans of other programs might not know is that but in the transition from Fickell to Saterfield attempted to keep the main core together that had been so successful in the previous couple of years. And that included prioritizing guys like Dante Corleone to make to keep them within the program and help him build his vision. And he's been here for that long because he loves the city, but he also loves the program. And this is kind of his program. He is like, he's the number one. He was the number one NIL guy. He was doing all these different things. He's kind of like the face of this football program when he's asked to go, talk at different events. He's the guy, and they are going to ask a lot from him, but it's nothing that he hasn't wanted for himself. They in the new facility, they got specifically made 200-pound dumbbells for Dante Corleone. It was in the press release that they had got these specific dumbbells for him. They have his name on it and everything. So this guy is kind of what the program stands for, and who this coaching staff wants to build is more guys like Dante Corleone. And just obviously he comes with his own just stature, but it's more that mindset too of staying with it, keeping within this program and building and continuing to develop. And because he was definitely a highly rated prospect when he got to Cincinnati, but he developed and he grew when he was here into becoming one of those bigger names in college football. And so he's kind of everything to this program, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And they're going to keep him out there as much as they can. They probably played him a little bit too much last year, to be honest, because there were definitely points where you could see him wearing down in like late in games. And it was because he was being asked to play a ton of snaps. I don't have the exact percentage off the top of the head, but it was a lot. And you could tell he was doing all he could to try and keep the team in games.
Well, let's do it. Let's get to the schedule quick. I think if Dante Corleone wants to be a first team all Big 12 kind of guy, I think Cincinnati could have a successful season. We look at it really quick. You get Nebraska in that neutral site against Kansas City, but Bowling Green, I think it's Northwestern State at home, Kansas on the road. We'll see what Kansas is. Iowa State at home, UCF at home. I know you guys said, what was it, bowling for Boulder? Or is that what you guys said for last year? Okay, It kind of feels like the same thing because like UCF, you have Oklahoma State the following week. The first 7 games to me seem very gettable, especially like Iowa State might be the toughest opponent in that little stretch, and you get them at home. This feels like Cincinnati could start off, I don't know, unfair. I know Cam Parks, our other co-host, and he's in the background here, so Nebraska fan, so he might have something to chime in. But that's what I got when I look at it briefly is the first 7 games Cincinnati's got to capitalize on it.
For sure. Yeah. And I wouldn't look past Nebraska at all. They're a solid team. Dylan Raiola is going to be big for them. It's basically a glorified home game for Nebraska. So they're going, Cincinnati is going to have to bring their A game to win that night and hope that Nebraska is able, Cincinnati is able to cause Nebraska to make some mistakes and be able to come away with a victory that night. But I mean, I won't look past Bowling Green either. I know they're a MAC competition, and Harold Fanning did leave, but Coach Eddie, why am I forgetting his name? The
Eddie
former,
George.
Eddie George. I knew it was a G. I'm sorry. I'm rusty. Okay,
Yeah.
My bad. But so he's a good coach, and so I would not overlook them as well, obviously. But I think the toughest game is going to be that Iowa State game, like you mentioned, because you guys have pretty much taken us to school over the past 2 years, and I have no doubt in believing that that's probably going to happen again this year. But I think the games that are gettable are definitely. It's if you look at it in those 4-game segments, like the schedule was made into the graphic for the first game of each of those 4-game segments, Nebraska and Iowa State are probably the toughest tests. And obviously Kansas as well is going to be a tough test. First conference game at home in the renovated booth. That's going to be a tough one, but I definitely see 6 winnable games within those first 8, and traveling to Utah is going to be tough. I know they weren't as good last year, but still traveling to Utah in November, I don't want any part of that trip. And then, Arizona at home in November, I might want a part of that trip just because it's the other way around for them. And we don't know what Arizona is really bringing this year. And, TCU, I like Max Hoover a lot. I think there's a lot there, but I think the ceiling for Cincinnati with this schedule is realistically 8 wins. I think that's the ceiling. I think most Bearcat fans are just hoping for 6 and to get to a bowl game, and that's that. But I do feel that, just how the schedule breaks every year, and this always happens for a couple teams in this league, is that, a couple things go their way. We all thought that Oklahoma State was going to be really good last year, and then they went 0-9. So I don't think they'll go 0-9 again this year. I think Oklahoma State is going to be tough. Baylor, they've got a good quarterback, and that'll be a tough game to win at home. And you've got BYU. I know a couple of their roster questions are up in the air right now, but still a solid team regardless. So it's not going to be easy for this Cincinnati team each week in the Big 12, but I do feel that there's 6 wins on the board. I don't want to say which ones there are yet, because I know I'll get clipped, and Big 12 Twitter will come after me whenever I say something that, especially for Utah, man, like Utah will come.
That's why we do it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think, Jake? Like, am I off take? Am I off base with 6 or 7 there?
No, I don't think so at all. And there are people that think this is the dark horse team. Arizona State was picked last year too. And I know that a lot of people have Cincinnati kind of in that 14, 15, 16 range, which I think is unfair, to be completely honest with you. I would at least have them within the 10 to 8 range when we maybe do our Big 12 power rankings before the season starts. But I know you kind of said it, Steve, but I do ask at the end of every show, what does success look like? I know you're kind of thinking maybe just bowl game, but do Cincinnati fans have a little bit of higher expectation than just getting over the threshold of a bowl game, or what is it?
Yes, definitely do have a higher expectation. And I don't know if fan expectation has met Big 12 reality just yet, even after those first 2 years, just because obviously Cincinnati had a great run at the end of their time in the American and being so successful, going to high visibility bowl games, being a part of the New Year's Six and the college football playoff. The standards are high at Cincinnati. Whether you think that's fair or not for a team that just joined the Big 12 in 2023 and is still, going to be part of that first big TV contract as a full member for the next few years, I don't know. That's for fans. We're irrational. Yep. That's what we do. Yep. And so, to me, if I'm being honest, I think 8 would be awesome. Like, I would be jumping for joy at 8. I think 6 is the goal, and 6 should be what this team gets to. I think, some places have the win total at 6.5, and I feel that it's not a wrong bet to take over 6.5. I do feel that there's winnable games on this schedule. And I think that's the thing that Cincinnati fans want to see, is to have this team prove them wrong, prove them wrong for having these beliefs in the coaching staff, in, not necessarily the players, but, just the level that our team was at the last 2 years compared to the rest of the league. I mean, look at UCF. They made the bowl game in their first year in the conference. Kansas has been, a surge for the last 2-3 years. There's been good programs, as like you said, Arizona State, exactly, great example. So there's the hope is for 6, but I feel that if we could get 8, that would be just an awesome thing for us. And you don't have to extend the coach. I don't think anybody's going to be going that far and be like, okay, you got to keep him now. He's got a 6-year contract and he's on year 3 now. And if he were to do really well, you don't really feel like you need to give him a big extension or anything like that. It's something where you celebrate this season and then you look forward and look to keep building on it. But I think at the minimum, they should be going bowling this season.
I love it. I think that's a good place to put a bow on it. That is your soon-to-be 2025 Cincinnati Bearcats. Steve, we appreciate you joining the show tonight, man. If you guys want to go follow Steve and all of his content that he does for Viva La Cats, the Cincinnati Bearcats podcast, the place to be, you can find them on X, Spotify, at Viva La Cats Pod on X, or just YouTube, Spotify, wherever you do get your podcast. Steve, once again, we appreciate you joining, man, and hopefully we can touch base in early October.
Sounds great. Thank you, sir. If you're coming out, let me know. I'll be happy to have you.
We will do. Absolutely. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Before you head out, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you're a Cincinnati fan, come and join us in the chat. We'd love to hear from you guys. My name is Jake. We will see you guys next time. Stay tuned for our next show. As always, got to send us out. Go Cyclones.